Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite everyone to please rise for the entrance of SEAMEO colors to be followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, helas ng sigakanan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong panggaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magtitindig. Lumalang araw ng walhaging pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Good afternoon, everyone, distinguished guests, valued partners, colleagues, and friends joining us here at SEAMEO INNOTECH, as well as those participating online from across Southeast Asia and beyond. Since May 2025, INNOTECH Seminar Series on Education, Innovation, and Technology has grown into a vibrant space for learning and exchange, where education, thinkers, practitioners, and partners from around the region come together to reflect on emerging issues and opportunities. Your continued participation, both on-site and online, shows how deeply committed we all are to helping transform the future of education in Southeast Asia. We are happy that today's event is being streamed live via Facebook, making the conversation accessible to a wider regional community. I'm Jellico Angela Riscado, Senior Officer from the Knowledge Management and Products Office, and I feel honored to be your host this afternoon. To formally open our program, it is my honor to invite our Center Director, who is an expert in public policy, economics, and education development, and who continues to shape INNOTECH's direction as we champion innovation and meaningful learning across the region, to deliver her welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, our Center Director, Dr. Mahalea Rabado.
Thank you, Jello. To our distinguished guest, Executive Director of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, ED Karol Mark Yee, to our officials here at INNOTECH, colleagues, to our partners, and also colleagues in the education sector, and to all our participants online and in person. Good afternoon. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. We are honored, of course, to have ED Karol of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM 2, as our guest speaker this afternoon. EDCOM 2's mandate is both timely and crucial. Established by Congress to conduct a comprehensive national assessment of the Philippine education system, the Commission is tasked with identifying key challenges and recommending coherent, evidence-based reforms across basic, technical, vocational, and higher education. This whole of system approach aligns strongly with INNOTECH's mission. We are a catalyst of innovation and technology transforming Southeast Asian education. And we envision that by 2035, we will be a leading force in empowering learners into the change makers of tomorrow. Across recent studies, ranging from Dec.10 sectoral reviews to international assessments such as PISA, CPLM, and large-scale report from multilateral organizations, a consistent message emerges. Education systems must adapt to changing learners' needs, shifting labor markets, and the accelerating rise of digital and AI-driven technologies. While these assessments differ in scope and methodology, they converge on three priorities: strengthening foundational learning, improving teaching quality, and ensuring coherence across the entire education pathway from early childhood to lifelong learning. The data illustrates the urgency. In the 2019 CPLM regional assessment, only 10% of grade 5 learners in the Philippines reached the minimum proficiency level in reading. In writing, only 1% met the benchmarks. In mathematics, only 17% achieved minimum proficiency. By contrast, our neighbors, Vietnam and Malaysia, performed significantly higher across all three domains, showing what is possible through sustained investment and coherent reform in the education sector. These findings underscore why EDCOM 2's work is so critical. Its focus on governance, system alignment, foundational learning, teacher quality, and long-term sustainability reflects the country's broader aspiration for future-ready education system, one that is stable across political transitions and resilient amid technological and socio-economic change. At INNOTECH, we share this forward-looking commitment. The increasing role of digital technology and even digital access across Southeast Asia, and the emerging opportunities brought about by AI, artificial intelligence, all point to the need for education systems that are inclusive, resilient, and rooted in strong data. As a SEAMEO center serving a diverse region, we believe progress requires co-creation, collaborations, and solutions that respond to the lived realities of different contexts. To everyone here, we welcome you once again, and we're looking forward to a productive exchange and discussion. So as we always say here, together let us drive innovation for education.
Thank you, Dr. Rabago, for that warm welcome. Your message really sets tone for this afternoon's session. So today's theme is actually a decade of necessary reforms, 2026-2035. This invites us to take a closer look at the Philippines' pivotal reform agenda for the next 10 years, an agenda shaped by the findings and recommendations of EDCOM 2. This envisioned decade of transformation highlights critical areas such as early childhood and foundational learning, addressing classroom shortages, reducing teachers' administrative burdens, improving governance structures, and strengthening alignment between senior high school, higher education, technical skills training, and the evolving labor market landscape. This session challenges us not only to understand these reforms, but also to reflect on how they can empower learners, support teachers, and foster education systems that are inclusive, future-ready, and resilient. We hope today's discussion sparks new insights, conversation, and collaborations that will help advance education, innovation, and sustainable development across the region. Our guest speaker this afternoon is the Executive Director of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM 2, the body mandated to assess the Philippine education system and recommend key reforms for national development. He previously served as Executive Director 4 of the Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, and as Director of the K-12 Transition Program. He has also worked in public service as a legislative officer under the late Senator Edgardo J. Angara, and later as a Chief of Party of the Youth Works PH, a major youth empowerment and workforce development initiative. He holds a PhD from the University of Cambridge and is a Jardine Foundation and Cambridge Trust Scholar, a Master of Education in International Education Policy from the Harvard Graduate School of Education as a Fulbright Scholar, and a Bachelor of Arts in Broadcast Communication from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, graduating magna cum laude and receiving the Gawad Chancellor. He is currently a faculty member at both the Ateneo de Manila University and the University of the Philippines, and actively conducts research in collaboration with universities here and abroad. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce the Executive Director of EDCOM 2, Dr. Karol Mark Yee.
Thank you for the introduction. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. To Director Maha and to all the SEAMEO officials and the partners that we have here with us for this conversation this afternoon, good afternoon. The title of my talk is A Decade of Necessary Reforms. Actually, we were supposed to launch our report a few weeks ago. And so we were supposed to present here the final findings of EDCOM and the final recommendations. But because of the many changes in the congressional calendar and the other things we need to finalize, we realize it's quite complex to come up with a national 10-year roadmap for education that brings together at least 6 government agencies. We are still finalizing that. But what I will present to you is the broad strokes directions as well as recent findings of EDCOM. This is really work ahead for us because we have 10 years of difficult but very critical work, perhaps transformative, life-changing work that we need to do as a country. And that is really my preface to this discussion. In the last 2 years, we've published 2 reports, which I hope you've seen already. The first is Miseducation, the Failed System of Philippine Education. This was when we were starting our work in EDCOM. Kung aalalahanin po natin, when we were starting our work in 2023, the only thing we were running with was the PISA results, that we were at the bottom of all participating countries, which came out in 2019, using 2019 data, and we knew that the situation was dire. But which interventions were needed, how bad it was, we were still only beginning to understand. And so the work of EDCOM in our first year was to begin exactly that, to understand the ground level realities of teachers, the challenges faced by students, and what we found was a largely disconnected system that did not talk to each other, that had very different targets, that had intentions for students that were different from Dec.10, CHED, TESDA, ECCD Council. Yung curriculum, iba-iba. Yung goals, yung definition ng 21st century skills, iba-iba. Iba-iba ang mga assessments sa tinuturo. And so it was really a fragmented system, which is why we said that it was a failed system of Philippine education. Our Year 2 report was Fixing the Foundations. Because if we would summarize all of our findings in the second year, it was this, that even if we try to perfect higher education, senior high school, if we have all the perfect TVL tracks and strands in the world, if we don't have strong foundations, we will fail as a country and as a system. And when we speak of foundations, we mean nutrition, because so many of our children are stunted, and therefore cognitive development is impaired from the get-go before they even reach kinder. Second is early childhood education, and the CPLM results that just came out bears me out. Those that have access to ECCD performed well. Studies all over the world tell us that they are more likely to be literate, more likely to complete secondary, more likely to reach higher education, and also more likely to earn higher after graduation in college. And so the data is clear. But access to ECCD nationally is still at 21%. After laws since 1990 saying that it is a universal access that we are trying to aspire for as a country, and that each barangay should have at least a daycare center. The third is literacy by grade 3, because we found out that so many of our students were progressing to higher grade levels, but were actually not able to comprehend, not able to decode many words, and also were struggling with numeracy. And so we found in our school visits with our legislators that there were so many grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9 students struggling with subtraction, multiplication, and division. And so yes, let us perfect high school. Let us perfect senior high school options. Let us improve universal access to quality tertiary education. But without fixing the foundations, let's forget about all the other reforms. Next slide. In the past 2 years of EDCOM, we have filed 37 priority bills, 10 of which have been already enacted into law, and we've put forward 114 policy recommendations in the Year 2 report, which is to say that there is enough work to do, and it is clear already what we need to resolve and prioritize. The next slide shows you all the different laws that have been passed. The most important for us, the ECCD System Act, which really rationalizes and addresses all the problems of the Early Years Act of 2013, which incidentally was the last law I worked on when I was with Senator Angara, the father, back in the Senate when I was starting my work as an education policy professional. The others here include basic education, mental health, and well-being, which really resolves our problem, or hopefully contributes to resolving our problems in bullying. Because in our Year 2, we found out that we were also the bullying capital of the world. And regardless of CPLM or PISA data or Dec.10 data, bullying incidence is the highest in the Philippines compared to all other participating countries, regardless of grade level. And so this is something that we need to address. We also passed, through the hard work of our legislators, the ARAL Act. If you would recall, prior to this, there was no packaged, comprehensive intervention program that allowed Dec.10 to truly focus on our struggling readers and to give support to teachers for doing so. Dati po ang mga teachers natin pag nag-remediate or pag nagturo sa mga bata after class, added work, charity, wala tayong suportang na ibibigay, wala rin pong kabayaran sa kanila. Through this, we are able to provide some compensation to the teachers who are actually doing important work in reaching out to our most marginalized students. So many laws passed already in the last 2 years, but many more to go in the next year. Among our successes also was the President committed to release 1 billion to fund ECCD centers in at least 320 LGUs that are poorest in the country that did not have access to early childhood. We also signed an NC3 for TESDA for ECCD workers. We realized in our Year 1 report, yes, we keep talking about ECCD, but actually there was no training for daycare workers and daycare teachers in this country, despite all of us saying it is one of the most important years for education. And so we worked with TESDA and CHED, and TESDA has finalized its guidelines for NC3, and there has been a scholarship for the past 2 years, and next year there will still be for all ECCD workers to pursue an NC3. This uniquely could be laddered to a diploma in early childhood education that CHED will launch by January. And after that, ladders towards a bachelor's in early childhood care. And so you can progress as a daycare worker to a daycare teacher to a key stage 1 teacher, and you have that path for you. In our discussions with DepEd, they have also committed that moving forward, senior high school will have an NC3 and ECCD option. So actually, you could graduate grade 12 with a certification in ECCD and already be in our daycare centers. Next slide. Finally also, ang joke ko nga po dito, after 100 years, nag-usap si CHED tsaka si PRC, because our problem here is that previously, whatever you studied in your teacher education institution was different from the assessment, which is the BLEP. The questions they asked were no longer relevant or similar to whatever we were teaching in our higher education institutions. Finally, pending the amendment of the law, which is currently ongoing, they have agreed that they will already discuss and align. And so starting September, that was the case. So what are our newest findings and recommendations? And for this group specifically, we've chosen 10 of what I think are our most important new findings that we should really understand and do something about. Speaking to Director Ravago's comment earlier, innovations. We really need support in innovating because some of these are wicked problems that we will not be able to solve overnight. And we need a lot of brain power to help us be creative and find those solutions in a context-specific way. The first is stunting. And I would always start with stunting because it continues to be one of our toughest battles in education sector. We've been working with all champions left and right for the past 3 years, but we have not yet resolved this, nor have we gotten close to a commitment that actually addresses our problem in stunting. Stunting does not happen in kinder to grade 6. It happens first 1,000 days or 0 to 4 years old. But it is the least that we are investing in as a country. Most of our budget continues to be towards school-based feeding, but when it comes to supplemental feeding, which is age 3 to 5, as well as first 1,000 days, we are not yet investing enough. There are too many children that are not getting the nutritional supports that they require to actually move from here to here. Because if you are cared for, this is how your brain would look like. If you don't get the nutrition that you require, this is how it is. But the challenge that we are seeing is that stunting occurs really from 2 years old to 3 years old. And at that point, the realities of rich and poor children diverge. Those who are poorest continue and get stunted. Those who are rich have a very high trajectory in improving their learning and abilities. Next slide. This is how it looks like when it comes to our funding. For the next year, so far, based on the version, but we are still lobbying, under the DOH budget, most of their programs for child health goes to immunization. Immunization is important, but nutrition is also so critical. But there are millions of children not getting the support. However, the budget proposed by DOH was only 977 million for more than 1,800 LGUs in this country. When we asked them what are the assumptions, they said, we assume. But we don't exactly know which LGU provides intervention, which ones do not. How do we hold them accountable? What type of resources do they need? What type of technical support do they require? And how can DOH, DILG, and NNC jointly work together to address this? This is still a frontier for us as a country. Next slide tells you about the SWD Supplemental Feeding Program. This is run in all daycares in the country. But what is the downside of that? Yes, we are feeding all children in daycares as of today. But because only 21% participate in daycares, what's happening is what we catch in daycares is only 43% of the universe of malnourished children aged 2 to 5. What it means is that most of the children who actually need it are not in daycares. And what are we going to do? Our point is we cannot wait in the daycares for them to come and for us to feed them. We need to be proactive, work with LGUs, work with barangays, work with barangay nutrition scholars and barangay healthcare workers to locate these children and to bring the intervention to them. Because if we wait, it is too long and we will not be able to resolve our learning crisis even with all the innovations in education. Next slide is classrooms. If we speak on basic education only, I would perhaps summarize our solutions into 4. Classrooms, teachers, textbooks, and targeted remediation. If we are able to fix those 4 things, we will be able to do basic education well. But what does the story tell us when it comes to classroom congestion? Our backlog, based on our last year's report, was 165,000 classrooms. According to estimates, it would take us 20 to 30 years to catch up with that backlog if we don't aggressively resolve it. This year, we updated our numbers after we cleaned up the analysis. The updated backlog figure is 147,000, but we computed how many classrooms in the country will turn 50 years old by 2028. If we add that, that is 51,000 classrooms by 2028. This will bring our total to 200,904. That is 200,000 classrooms to build. And what do we know from our hearings in the Blue Ribbon, if you have been watching intently? Initially, we constructed 22 this year. Umakyat na daw po to 80. Our backlog is 200,904 by 2028. And what is the downside? Because sometimes it is easy to, I guess, be jaded by figures. In most of the classrooms we visited, for example, in Cavite, yung mga estudyante po, 3 shifts. A kinder student has to start class at 5:30 in the morning and to finish at 9 a.m. because there are 2 more batches that will use the same classroom for the remainder of the day. We also found students in high school who could only go to class MWF because TTHS, modular, they have to study at home. There is a huge assumption. One, that their home is conducive to learning, and second, that they are capable of learning at home. You realize that when you look at our data, most of our high school students are likely not independent learners because they could not yet read based on their grade level. And so if you assume that they can study at home and only have them come into class half of the required instructional time, then we are truly sacrificing learning. And this is the huge challenge that we are facing. Secretary Angara today has launched their program, and they have many that are trying to address classroom congestion. They are doing PPPs, they are doing LGU counterparting, they are requesting support from Congress to work with civil society organizations, and then some of the funds will still also go to DPWH. What we are saying is we need all hands on deck for us to do everything we can to solve this. And I think this is where technology might be able to come in. For which subjects, which grade levels, which type of students can technology be used to actually decongest classes? In what ways can technology be used to make sure that learning is happening? These are things we need to think about because we need to also use technology strategically. Hindi po siya pwedeng one size fits all, strike anywhere. Lahat ng may gadget, bigyan ng gadget, kaya na yan. We feel that there are specific profiles of learners that would benefit from using technology, and we should be intentional in using it. Next slide. We also found that there were actually so many private schools that had excess seats. In fact, based on our analysis with eCare, also, is that 23% of I-learners, meaning the students who could not be accommodated anymore but are in DepEd schools, can be given urgent relief if we gave them vouchers to go to the nearest private school instead. And we computed private school based on our mapping as 20-minute transport time, meaning not very far from where you might be living, there is a private school that can accommodate you. And this is something that DepEd has requested Congress to give them permission to do and to legislate. And this is also one of the priority measures of the President to finish this year, that we are able to expand vouchers to kinder to grade 6 so that if there is a quality private school nearby, that you be given a voucher to study there. Next slide. So this is just the features of what we are proposing. And some of the things we are thinking of also is maybe, what is private school good at? For example, inclusive education. How can we really make sure that we are able to provide quality learning for learners with special needs in our resource-constrained public schools? If there are good private schools, can we use vouchers for that? So things of that nature we are also thinking of. Next slide. The CPLM, which I'm sure you're all education nerds, you've studied the results that came out recently. It tells us that there are modest improvements in reading, slightly higher in math. So habang nagre-regress or bumaba yung sa ibang bansa, sa atin po umakyat pa, which is a good output, but it tells us also what we have been trying to figure out for a long time. Ang tanong ko nga po lagi, how would you profile the student who is poorest performing in this country? And so far, the answer I am getting from the CPLM are 3. Boy, rural, congested classroom. So if you could find boys that are studying in congested schools in rural communities, those are our poorest performing students from the 2019 and the 2024 CPLM. Because if we keep talking about interventions, but we don't know who the learner is that needs our support the most, then how will we solve our problem? The CPLM tells us that. The other thing that the CPLM tells us is that we are headed in the right direction. What am I saying? When you study the factors that contribute to improved performance of students, it is availability of learning resources and early childhood care and nutrition. Those are the two things that people have noted in the study as being critical to improving performance. Last week, DepEd reported that after long coordination with us and with GPPB, they have been able to solve the decade-long gridlock in textbook procurement. In the year one report of EDCOM, from 2013 to 2023, the only students that had complete textbooks for the last decade were grades 5 and 6 students. In the last year alone, DepEd has been able to procure more than 100 titles, boosting their procurement rates by 289% compared to the whole previous decade in just 1 year. With continued improvements in our procurement policies, as well as in ensuring that they are delivered and quality to our schools, we are confident that we are closer to getting to that solution. Next slide, number 4, is teachers. And I think this is obvious to all of us. An education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. But what did we find in our work in EDCOM? That most of our teachers were teaching a subject they did not study or learn from themselves. Marami po kaming pinuntahan ang sasabihin ng teacher, "Sir, how can I teach science well? I finished English." "How can I teach math well? I finished TLE." So tech voc pero pinagtuturo ng geometry. And this is a challenge that we are facing because we have not done supply and demand mapping and strategic allocations of scholarships in a way that resolves our own problems as a country and even just specifically public schools. If you look at all programs of higher education today, most of it is either elementary education or English education, teaching in English in secondary. But the fields that we are truly lacking are STEM. Teachers in science, teachers of GMRC or edukasyon sa pagpapakatao, and teachers of MAPE. Ang joke ko po sa MAPE, actually hindi siya joke. If you're a PE teacher and you are hired to be the MAPE teacher, you also teach music. So good luck. Kasi kung magaling ka mag-basketball, sana nakakakanta ka rin at marunong kang mag-gitara at mag-piano kasi sa'yo lahat yon. Pati reproductive health sa'yo. So, I don't envy the work of our MAPE teachers, but this is something we truly need to solve. Because how did we think that a teacher can handle all of those subjects in one go? Those are entirely different skill sets. Next slide. We need to address mass promotion. Yes, there is no policy on mass promotion. That insofar is true. But what do we know happens? One, that even if they are not meeting grade level standards, they pass and they move on to the next level. Second, our targets unintendedly force our teachers and principals to pass students. Why is that? If you look at the targets set for DepEd by other agencies in negotiations po ito across government, two of the targets, completion rates, retention rates. What is the challenge? Next slide and next slide. What happens is, if the target is 98% retention rate and secondary is 96%, on the ground, how it is implemented by some of our divisions and some of our principals is, it means to say dapat 100% passing rate tayo para ma-meet natin yung completion rate. Or, 0 dapat yung dropout. And so what they do is, they just pass. Because according to many of the teachers we talk to, if you don't pass the students, the burden of coming up with the reports, the justifications, not just defending yourself with the principal, but defending yourself to the division superintendent, and then you would hear pa comments like, napahamak yung division, napahamak yung school. And so if you fail students, actually, it becomes your fault. You become the liability. And so there is a culture that prevents them from actually failing students. And that is the challenge we are facing. We need to address this, and we need to address this culture that has been embedded in our public school system for some time. Our proposal is, let's not stick to very neat targets like this, but instead focus on the remediation support to learners. Ibig sabihin, how many are able to move from struggling readers to grade level ready? How many are now attaining this level of proficiency? Mas ganon. Or how many of students who are failing or absent or were absent were given interventions successfully or completed aral interventions? Because at least in that way, we are able to really direct the targets to the intervention instead of it being misinterpreted as we have to pass everyone. Everyone needs to move up to the next grade level. The next slide is amending the grade transmutation policy. Because yes, there has been a grade transmutation policy in place, at least now for the past 10 years. And what is it? If your score is 60, when the card comes out, it becomes 75. But the challenge is DepEd's remediation program and retention policies are based on these transmuted grades. And what is the challenge? It means you were actually not doing well, but because of the transmutation, you are not reached by the intervention that was designed into the system to support you. And so what happens is you pass, you think you're okay, you move on to the next grade level, but you struggle. And then the cycle continues. And then at this point, as we've seen in our visits, you are in high school, but you are actually not high school level because of the practice. And so our request is, our call is, we need to amend this policy and we need to reflect actual ability, not to put down students, but to make sure we know who needs intervention and then we give robust supports. Because if you don't give them what they need, then how will they really be able to improve and address the challenges they are facing? Next slide. Next slide. This is something that struck us. As I said earlier, in year 2, we reported about bullying incidents in our schools. But what we found, and unexpectedly, was that most of our students, 40%, 10 years old, said that they were exposed to violence at home. And so we are asking ourselves, if you don't feel safe, because that is what their response was in CPLM and PISA, they don't feel that they are safe in school, they don't feel like they belong, and they are one of the loneliest in the world. If our students are lonely in school and are exposed to violence at home, where are they safe? And where do they feel that they can actually spend time to learn? And so this needs further understanding, this needs further unpacking, and then we need to come up with solutions because there are no plug-and-play solutions to the violence that we are seeing now. We are not even asking about violence online, and we know that that is also present. Where do our students feel safe? How could we make sure that they feel that it is okay, and that they are okay, and that they can spend time to focus on learning? So more than just an academic solution, I think we need to see our learners as whole persons and to address them in that way and to support them in that way, because just looking at one but not the whole might be not a way for us to give them the supports that they need. Next slide. The other thing that struck us, and we did the work this year of really understanding, because most of the results that we see are average results, meaning to say average percentage of students proficient in the NAT G6, G10, G12. But actually, you have so many profiles of students. In fact, we found out, and in our continued studies, most large-scale standardized assessments are used not only to understand how your country is doing, but also how distinct profiles of students are doing. In our country, we've done generic NATs, but not yet defining who are our unique student populations that perhaps we should oversample and to understand how they are actually doing so that our interventions are designed intentionally for them. We tried to compare students on average versus students enrolled in schools in geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas, last mile schools, hardship post schools. So these are areas with conflict, for example, indigenous people's education, and madrasa education program. Two things that strike us is that one, in fact, the difference is not too far off from each other. The general situation, I thought, would be much different or would be much higher than students who quote unquote, will be considered vulnerable. But it's not too far, but we also see that there is a gap that we need to address. So I think the point for us is, yes, let us think of ARAL interventions, let us think of remediation support for average students, but obviously the design needs to be different if you are in a last mile school, if you are an IP, if you are in a hardship post, or if you're in a GIDA. Because what we've done is to lump them all up in one policy and then let them all just figure out how to do it themselves. Next slide. The other thing that when we were students, I was always excited when it rains hard because it means a free day to stay home and to sleep. But we realize now how catastrophic that has been on our education system. And the header of this is learning loss needs to be mitigated because we are losing too much of something we do not have enough of because of suspensions. And there are three things. Suspensions due to rain, heat, fear, pressure online that then becomes a class suspension announced by different levels of local governments, sometimes preemptive suspensions. That's not ombudsman doing preemptive suspensions. These are local government officials. And then we also found out there were more than 180 legislated celebrations, commemorations, festivals that need to be celebrated. From White King Day to National Kidney Month to National Lung Week to all the different weeks and months and days to be celebrated. What is the challenge? Yes, there has been policies in DepEd saying you need to focus and save instructional time. But what we know on the ground is there are differing interpretations of policies and celebrations. Some of them celebrate National Lung Month for a month. Some of them celebrate some week celebrations for an entire week and not just, ang sabi po sa amin sa mga consultations, sir, mabuti nga ba kung yung 1-hour program lang? Minsan po, isang linggong nagpa-practice para sa 1-hour program. So, ang dami ding na-cancel na class. Minsan po, meron tayong mga national competitions, pero hindi lang siya national. Kasi kahit summer nangyayari yung competition, may division level meet, may regional level meet, and at that point, suspended na naman ang classes. And so, there are suspensions, preemptive or real. There are celebrations, commemorations, milestones, activities, and festivals. And then there's also absenteeism. The data that we are seeing now from CPLM tells us that it might be more problematic than we assume. The data shows that 17% are typically absent, but we don't know who they are yet, and we need to figure out how to resolve that issue. Because if this student is absent for at least 20%, and then you are losing at least a month again because of celebrations, and then you lose another month because of suspensions, you lose almost 1 to 2 quarters every year. And this assumes that you're learning in school, which is not always the case. And so we need to actually count each day and make sure that anything that could be saved for learning, we save. And that all celebrations, hopefully that we will do in the future, is one that reinforces learning and not another contest, another party, another suspended class. Next slide. When it comes to TechVoc, this is something that we have continuously repeated in all of our conversations with TESDA. As a country, we have so much potential. We know of so many of our overseas Filipino workers who finished TESDA and did well abroad. But we were surprised when we computed the data of TESDA. The bulk of our graduates in TVET are only in 2 programs, Bread and Pastry NC2 and Driving NC2. Ang joke ko po sa TESDA, ang dami ng banana cake, ang dami ng banana bread. Huwag na po tayo sigurong mag-baking. There are so many other needs that we are not providing. For example, animation is an NC. Welding is an NC. Programming is an NC. There are so many options for NCs that we can support. Barangay Healthcare Services is an NC. We have real gaps as a country that we can use TVET strategically to address and make sure they have gainful employment instead of beauty care, pastry, as well as driving. We also found out in at least 3 studies now that TVET matters, but only if you actually are less educated or undereducated, and we define this as high school graduate, and then you take up TVET. Elementary graduate only, and then you take up TVET. If that is the case, and you finish NC3 and NC4, your earnings double after. But if you are a college graduate and you take an NC, your earnings decline because it seems to be a signal that you are not a good student, we don't want to hire you, or we will give you less pay. And so there are nuances to TVET that we are understanding. In the last study that we commissioned, it mattered if what you finished and what you are taking is matched. Meaning, you took up welding and you're taking a welding job, obviously. But what was agnostic to the sector? ICT. If you finish a certification in ICT, regardless of what sector you join, it is a substantial increase that you gain. And so we are still understanding TVET more and more because for the last decade at least, how we collected data in LFS was not one that lended itself to analysis of TVET because of how we computed things and what we assumed and what our definitions are, and they always don't align across government agencies. Next slide. The last is diploma mills. In the last year, actually the last 2 months, most of our work has been to understand and to address diploma mills, beginning with teacher education. Napakarami pong reports that we have received, email, written, messages, comments, that there are too many higher education institutions where you can finish PhDs in just 1 year and masters after just 1 semester. May mga nagre-report po, pagka-enroll mo pa lang, ready na yung thesis mo, babayaran mo na lang. May isa pa pong nagsabi, Lacoste t-shirts daw ang kailangan niyang bilhin para sa buong panel niya para pumasa. And so this is really happening. There are so many reports also that we received that many of their colleagues who were teachers were studying masters online in a school based in Aklan, even if they were from Bulacan. And so this is happening left and right. There are too many graduate providers of teacher education, masters, and PhD that are substandard. Next slide. And this is our joke during Halloween. Lahat may PhD na at saka may masters. And marami pong galit. Maraming galit online. Sila pa daw yung mga, pag hindi mo tinawag na doktor, magagalit sa'yo. Sabi, diploma mill na nga, mayabang pa. So, ang daming hate online. They're really pouring their hearts out because I think that there are some creatures on the ground who make their lives miserable, who they feel went to substandard programs. And so we are getting all of their reports. But on the ground, we have to accept the reality. Under CSC rules, if you want to be a master teacher, you need a master's degree. And what it says there is master's in education in a relevant field. And so it becomes anything. As long as you have a master's in education, my big issue here is all of them are finishing ed administration, but they're not going to be principals. They're going to be teaching science. Why not teach masters in science teaching, considering our gap in science teachers? Why are they taking ed admin and ed leadership and then becoming a teacher with wrong specializations and did not have any background on the content knowledge they're teaching? Pero ang sagot ng mga teachers, kahit saan naman ako mag-masters, mapopromote naman ako. Because we are blind and agnostic to where you finish, to what degree, and then we process papers for promotion. This is something we need to think about. And so on one hand, Dec.10 and CSC discussing, should we really require master's degrees? And if so, how could we improve the current setup? And on the other, CHED, how do you quality assure teacher education programs? Because from what we are seeing, so many of them are substandard. Next slide. So finally, because now agencies are talking, and I think we kind of um, don't always appreciate the fact that for the first time in many, many years, agencies are coordinating with each other. When the issue came out on diploma mills, CHED, Dec.10, and PRC sat down together and said, okay, let's do something urgently. And what did they agree? Two things. One, that in the next 2 years, they will jointly visit all offerers of masters and PhDs in teacher education, and those not compliant with standards will be phased out. And second, next slide, to launch this website. For the first time, a registry of all government-recognized teacher education programs in the country, putting 3 details. Next slide. If it is a center of excellence and development, if it is an accredited program, and also the licensure exam passing rate. At least 3 signals of quality to support parents, to support students, to support teachers in deciding where to go. Plus, the drop-down tells you, okay, I am from Surigao, what is the closest SPED program that I can enroll in? You will find the answer here. And then you say, which one of these is a center of excellence? And then you can choose the school. And so this seemingly is a simple reform, but it took us 3 decades to get here. And so it is something to truly celebrate and appreciate, and hopefully get more of our students to know. Next slide. The proposed legislation for the 20th Congress, next slide. We have still many bills in the pipeline. Among them, the Vouchers Act, the Classroom Building Acceleration Program, amendment to the Special Education Fund, as well as to the TES, the Tertiary Education Subsidy, as well as amending the licensure exam law. We have also filed bills to amend the DepEd, the CHED, and the TESDA charters because we found that they were running on a mandate that was still from the 1990s, at least for now, 30 plus years old, no longer reflective of their work and what we have learned since then. For example, DepEd. Under RA 9155 of year 2001, it is through Congress that they said there that per province, there is only one division, school division. But we found in Leyte, 1,200 schools, one division. But you have in Batanes, one division, 24 schools. But same personnel, same scope, but so many students, so many schools to serve. Each division office has only one engineer, meaning all repairs you have to do, all construction you have to do, it is one engineer that does the work. If you are in Leyte and you have 1,200 schools with repairs simultaneously happening, and you are one division engineer, I think all the innovations in the world will not suffice to help you in your job. We need to rationalize it, and we need to fix these structural challenges that have impeded us from ensuring that we are providing quality education. Next slide. In EDCOM, by January, and as of yesterday, it shifted again by 1 week because they adjusted the legislative calendar. January 26, we will publish the final EDCOM report. Next slide. But also, sometime this week, we are likely to see this be a law, which is to extend the mandate of EDCOM for 2 more years. Kasi po, dapat tapos na kami by January. The law to amend it and to extend EDCOM up to December 2027 will again be another law to help EDCOM continue its work for 2 more years. Next slide. But despite all of these challenges, and as I said earlier, nagsimula po tayo ng nauunawaan lang ay PISA results. We are at the bottom of all participating countries. We were doing badly. But at this point, 3 years into our work together, I think we need to acknowledge and celebrate that we are at a turning point in our country's history, at least for Philippine education. We have not understood and diagnosed the problems of Philippine education in such a detailed way, and neither have we had, one, the data to help us target and understand how we will actually resolve it, and third, the political will and the national support from all stakeholders to get things right finally. And this is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a difference. And I will end my talk with three numbers. Next slide. 4.5%. It was a dream for us to breach 4% of GDP for education for a very long time. For at least 2 decades now, we have been saying we need to allocate 4 to 6%. Last year, in our discussions in EDCOM, we were saying, let's target for 4.5% by 2035. But a few months after, because of the momentum that our work together has all produced, we are at 4.5% by January. And this is unprecedented investment in education. This is a strong start to fixing the reforms that we will make sure we are able to do together. Next slide, 289%. From no textbooks to improved procurement of textbooks by 289% in just 1 year. And we are just getting started. Once we fix all of these remaining bottlenecks, in 1 year's time, all students in the country will have one textbook, one student for all subjects, which has not happened in the last 2 decades of our history as a nation. Third, 1.3 years. Last May, this is a very small program that not a lot of people know about, but we should keep talking about it. Dec.10 ran a pilot program called Bawat Bata Makababasa in Region 9. Zamboanga Peninsula was the poorest performing in literacy across all regions in the country, excluding BARM. They ran a 20-day intervention. And based on studies by Youth Impact, which is an international group that does rigorous evaluation of learning outcomes, the 20-day intervention was equivalent to 1.3 years worth of schooling. This boosts our confidence that we know the ingredients that can help our students learn. And what was the design of BBMP in Region 9? Small classes in Key Stage 1. 10 to 15 students only, focused teacher, trained teacher, complete materials with feeding, with vision screening. We checked the eyesights of the kids. We made sure they had snacks. We trained the teacher, gave them resources, gave them focused attention, and every day they worked hard to attain mastery. In 20 days, they gained what would take usually 1.3 years to achieve. And this is just 20 days, and this is just the beginning. We are in a turning point in our history. We have the resources, we have the political will, we have the ingredients to change it. We know the solutions already, and we are confident that we can solve them. We can also learn a lot from our neighbors, because if there's anything that the CPLM tells you, we are sharing similar challenges as a region, actually. But we need to do better and need to do more when it comes to exchanging ideas and best practices. For example, we could share BBMP, and we could likely gain from them for other interventions they've tried. But, and this is a big but, it will only happen if we focus. There are too many things, too many voices, too many problems that need to be resolved. Yes. But we need to choose top 3, top 5. Because if we don't, we will run like headless chickens once again, scatter our resources left and right, and not achieve a single thing. What is fundamental, what is non-negotiable, what is path-dependent to all other reforms we want to achieve. And for us, clearly, that is literacy. If all of our students gain literacy by the time they finish grade 3, we are sure that we will be a different country 3 years from now if only we get our acts together. But we cannot afford to keep restarting every 3 or 6 years. If 3 years from now, there is a new intervention program, a new curriculum again, a new design again, a new budget again, new additional priorities again, we will never get to the finish line. I am saying this because we need everyone's support so that we are anchored to just these priorities. And if government decides to shift ways, we say, stop, we are not yet done with literacy. Let us stick to that and see to it that we get to the finish line. This is our fate as a country, or a challenge as a country for the last century. Before we finish anything, we change and pivot too quickly. We need continuity. We need to sustain our efforts, which is why we are saying it is a decade of necessary reforms. The reforms are necessary. We know the solutions, but we need to do it, and we need to sustain it, and we need to make sure government does too. Next slide. Let us build an education system that matches the talent of every Filipino child. We are not going from good to great in just 10 years. We're going from bad to good. But that is okay, because that is still much better than closing our eyes, mass promoting, and then letting our children graduate and end up wherever they might be, apparently illiterate, apparently not ready for the requirements of life and of work. Let us do it. Let us get this done. We know how to do it. It is about doing now. Salamat po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yee. Indeed, we need to focus, prioritize, and ensure continuity of our reform efforts. So, just an update. As of the moment, we have about 1,500 viewers via Facebook Live. They're joining us live, and please keep your comments and questions coming. We value your insights and contributions as part of this regional dialogue. Now, we transition to our open forum. To guide us in this important conversation, it is our honor to introduce Ms. Kaylene Fernandez Lau, one of our INNOTECH's dedicated senior associates at the Educational Technology Innovation and Research Office under the Educational Innovation and Technology Unit. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming Ms. Lau.
Sound check. Hello. There we go. Okay. So good afternoon, sir, and thank you again for that very comprehensive and forward-looking presentation. Indeed, there is still so much to do, and there are so many factors that can really affect quality education. Okay, so I guess we're all ready for this portion. So this is how we're going to do it. We will invite questions from the people here on site. As you can see, there are various microphones on the left side and one on my left, so your right, and then on the other side, there's also one. So when you are asked to, when you're called to ask your question, please cite your name and your organization and then proceed to your question. All right, so we have one gentleman here. Yes, sir, go ahead. Please proceed to the microphones. There we go. Thank you, sir.
Karol Mark Yee for a comprehensive update on what EDCOM 2 is doing. It seems to me, sir, that from the EDCOM 3 reports, or the 2.5 bit that has been revealed, there are 2 tracks of intervention needed. One is to fix the present and the future, and that's many of the things you've outlined are very exciting, are already doing that in terms of the RL, the literacy strength, and so on. But because of the decades of miseducation and the failed education system, we cannot just ignore the millions of Filipinos who have been suffered from that failure. And so latest statistics show that at least 20 million are not functionally literate. And that will grow. We expect that to grow due to the COVID fallout and so forth. And therefore, we need to look at those who aren't in the education system as well, availing of alternative learning system. And as you know, sir, Republic Act RE 11510 sets a framework for reform, but there's an underinvestment. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the moving forward from EDCOM 2, what are the specific strategies for investment in both recurrent investment, increasing the current allocation of the education budget from its 0.1% to where it should be at 2-3% for regional benchmarks in Southeast Asia. And secondly, probably a need for a one-time 10-year infrastructure or super investment to kickstart the absence of CLCs, the need to double the number of teachers and so forth. So that'll be the first thing, will be what's happening on that ALS universe within Dec.10, which is a critical part of the Philippine society. The second question would be, the research we've recently done at EDC shows that by 2030, 20% of jobs will be in the green economy. And yet we don't see reforms from TESTA, from CHED, from even Dec.10 in terms of adequately preparing the youth for these green skills, these new jobs, these new skill sets. So anything that EDCOM 2 is looking at on that green economy preparation work as you look to the decade ahead. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, thank you. So I'll answer the two questions. One is on ALS. So we've advocated a lot of increases for the ALS budget, and I think we got most of it. And so there would be a huge bump in the ALS investment for next year. This is for CLCs, teacher training, conversion of some existing ones, and also building of new ones that are type 5. Yes, type 5. We're already in the process of actually unveiling, Dec.10 is actually. But I would like to update you on something else, because in our discussion with ALS, and I think we discussed earlier, pathways was mentioned. And I think we've not really understood and embraced it sufficiently as a country. And I think more and more in our discussions now, although nascent, is that we need a system that has no dead ends. And how does that look like? I think the starting point, and to be very candid, it is truly a starting point, is how to risk profile students and then to give them the intervention they require before they even drop out of the system. Because it seems to be that there are too many who drop out or who are too long in the system, meaning recurring repeaters of grades that are there but are just supported in the mainstream formal same way that we've done in the last 3 decades. We need to start thinking differently. Our discussion jointly now with Dec.10 and TESDA is, you see the FLEMS data. 30% thereabouts of Filipinos, regardless of age group, regardless of educational attainment, on average, are functionally illiterate. Meaning to say, people who are in jobs today also may be basically literate, but might not be able to comprehend complex texts or things that they might need for day-to-day life. And so the discussion is, can we agree? Because I think the starting point is an agreement. In the language of learning progression, what is it that we feel is imperative that all Filipinos have or can do when it comes to literacy and numeracy, regardless if you are Dec.10, CHED, or TESDA? What is that base? And all Filipinos who are not there, how could we all have a program to reach them? For Dec.10, we are starting the discussions with them on coming up with an FLP, because currently it's a basic literacy program. You don't have anything that serves the attainment of functional literacy. And we've looked at so many models around the world. Many countries have embraced the reality that not all will be able to achieve all of your desired competencies on paper. But you need some competencies that all Filipinos require to succeed in life. That is the bare minimum. And we need to bring everyone to that at least. Ontario has it. Even the UK has it. Some states in the US have it. Australia has it. New Zealand, Singapore. We are too late in the game, actually. But we need to start thinking of that. The second question was, green economy. Again, nascent. But when you see the new SHS options, it will be one that is better reflective of not just green economy, but also blue economy and creative economy. Because these are the 3 things that we are trying to fix in the SHS Tech Pro options, which will not be next year for these electives, but soon after. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we call on the next person to ask a question, we'd also like to invite our online participants on Facebook and YouTube. You may put your questions in the comment section. So we have the next one. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Sir Carol. Hi, everyone. So I'm one of the teachers on the ground. I could very much relate on the report of Doc Carol. No, I teach at the school where we have 10 classrooms for about 10 sections per year level. Imagine. So we have three shifts on a day. But I am also an ALS teacher, an alternative learning system teacher in BGMP facilities. Okay, so that was my question, but you responded well to the question of our gentleman there. Maybe this is just something that I can put on the discussion about ALS, because alternative learning system is supposedly to work on the background of the students, but at the end of the day, our student can earn their diploma only by passing the ANE test, which is a standardized test. And mostly, for instance, in one ALS center of 30 examiners, about 2 or 3 only passes. And it becomes very dangerous because in other provinces, I won't name one, they would have 100% passers. And you would see that they have very few listed examinees. What's the danger there is, and it's I think it's starting in my place now. So we are now looking for students of ALS who may pass the test and focus on them. So we will prepare them. This will be very problematic with the basic literacy or basic functional literacy that we hope to gain through ALS. So I think we have a problem with ANE test that we need to look at, no? Especially lalo na no sa facilities, sa BJMP facilities, our main concern is really to accept from the functional literacy, no? Of course, it's for their reformation. So their examination should be how can they be better reintegrate in the society along with learning functional literacy. But that's not what they take, no? In the exam, they need to take Pythagorean theorem and whatnot. They cannot relate to this at all. And so we understand why they don't pass. Ano po, sir, maybe that's one good thing to look at in your discussion with Dec.10 and others. Ano po, another thing, I also teach part-time sa college. Okay, I'm with my college mates here. Okay. Tanungin ko na lahat baka ngayon na ako makahawak ng phone. Okay, napansin ko lang kasi halimbawa sa mga nursing program, their faculty still work in hospitals. Di ba? That's I think that's a requirement for them. With our education teachers, I'm very proud with San Mateo Municipal College because they still take the services of part-time Dep.Ed teachers who can bring in what's really happening in the ground. But I fear that in other education schools, they might have education teachers who know nothing about what's really going on in basic education. Especially ngayon, yung mga aral program and all that, dapat maalam yung school, right? The colleges should know things about that. Baka puro na lang, higher education, wala nang alam tungkol sa ground. Yun lang po, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll take note of the three points that you made, but that is clearly something that we need to address. One of the things that we've always pushed for was to deepen the field teaching experience of our pre-service education programs, because we found out in our comparative analysis that we had the fewest in the world. The shortest amount of practice teaching of all pre-service programs in the world is in the Philippines. And so the Teacher Education Council has agreed to really figure out how to fix the curriculum and also to expand the number of hours, but also to figure out how do you actually do that well, that gives them an immersive but also well-coached, mentored experience. But also we're talking about the teacher ed faculty, which is something to deal with again. So we will get to that point somehow. Walang easy answer pagdating doon kasi sa exposure, I mean, ideally, with research, with extension, it allows them to get updated to what is needed on the ground, and therefore what they do is responsive and updated. But we also don't allot kasi time for research and extension and only load them for teaching. So how do you do that? So it's finding a middle ground given all of these things.
So thank you for your question, sir, and for your response, Dr. Yee. I think we have questions from our online participants, so let's hear it from our team.
Good afternoon. We have a question from Lilet Makilan. There is a bill filed by Senator Robin Padilla abolishing the K-12. How can we ensure that significant progress that have been done over the years in the education sector will not be undone by political reforms introduced midway while we are trying to recover?
So I think it will still go through the process of committees, deliberations, etc. But I think for now, what I understand is the position of many is that there is still a lot that we could refine and improve in senior high school and K to 12. Yes, it has been imperfect. Yes, there were some mistakes along the way, but we know them now. We know how to solve them, and we will fix them. None of these curricula naman are perfect from the start. And you really need to commit as a country to continuously refine and address those mistakes. But that needs to happen in lockstep with each other and not parang filing and making changes and then you stop everything that's happening and then you don't learn from your experience. So I think, from my understanding, the general position is that it continues and that we continue to refine.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any more questions from on-site? At the back, sir? Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Karol, Rafi po from INNOTECH. My question is basically about the Philippine qualifications framework and the findings or the researches that EDCOM 2 has done on it. Particularly, you touched a bit on it when you mentioned about these from welder to engineer and going through the level alignment from 1 to 8. So the question is, given that a law has recently been passed on about PQF. So, how do we start maximizing the benefits under it? Because as you are aware, the 7 technical working groups, they're all interrelated so much that if you tinker with the level alignment matrices, the qualifications register, it will impact on the pathways and equivalencies. It will impact on the international alignment. But we do know that the foundation is still being fixed, which is what is reflected in the report. So given those complications, given the context that we have in fully maximizing the benefits of the PQF, what is the recommendation or what are your thoughts on how to maximize it? Which one will we fix first? Do we fix the level descriptors? Do we fix the PQR? Do we fix the quality assurance? Or how do we move forward?
I think we have to start by being pragmatic. What can support more learners if we start with that? Kasi even the international recognitions and alignments, yung PQR, which is still, so everything is a work in progress, right?
Yes.
Most of the things that are in the PCTS have not really
There are only 4.
changed since 2019. Since for all of these years, it has been the same. Ang sabi ko, how do we choose which ones to get into to begin with?
Which one?
Which students, for example, need career ladders to progress up so that they can keep, advancing in their careers or their professions? Which ones will affect our overseas workers the most because these are not yet referenced or recognized abroad? So that should be our compass. Our learners, more than just the bureaucracies or the laws or the policies that we want to fully implement. So that is what we have been asking the PQF NCC Secretariat to find out and to prioritize. Kasi we won't be able to fix it overnight, especially because it has been stagnant for quite a number of years prior to this year. And so that's still the process, I think. But what we have been working on is the updating of the referencing framework because it is clear that, for example, to us, we won't be able to achieve what we desire in terms of high-level skills because we want to move away from purely NC1 and NC2. And most of our TVETs are NC1 and NC2. But as long as you don't allow them to progress upwards the ladder and don't give them a glass ceiling at level 5 and then ask them to shift to higher ed,
Yes.
only as a way of proceeding upwards, that's something we need to rethink, no?
Yeah.
Because not we set that as a country, we set that up as a country, which is why if you look at our bills amending the charter of TESDA, CHED, and also LUCs, we put a language on polytechnics, and that polytechnics will be TVET in track, but going all the way up to level 7 and level 8. So suggesting essentially that we do need to update the referencing framework and to proceed and really explore how we will develop high-level skilling options and pathways so that there are no dead ends in our current framework.
Just a short intervention also on the technical panels. We see the duplication, right? We have the PRBs, the technical panels, industry boards. They're all the same person. So I hope that's
Well,
also...
not always the same, which is also a trouble, no? So it's a problem if they're
Yeah.
different people. It's also a problem if they're the same people.
Yes,
So the answer is we have filed the bill, which was actually heard yesterday in the House, which is a Philippine professional and quality assurance framework that rationalizes or harmonizes all the different policies of CHED, TESDA, and PRC. Because, for example, master plumbing is not with TESDA, it is with PRC.
PRC, regulated.
Then you have programs that they have laws, professional regulatory laws that prescribe for midwifery and nursing that the faculty of nursing needs to have what? A master in
Master's
nursing or
yeah.
master in education to be a faculty of nursing. I don't know a nurse practitioner. Parang, if you're a nurse practitioner and you want to teach nursing, why do you need a master's of education to be able to teach nursing? I mean, these are many convoluted policies that overlap and really make our tertiary education space quite confusing and really impede quality assurance, because who do you follow when you have three different agencies saying something else and they don't all talk to each other? The bill that we filed was already heard in the committee yesterday, but even prior to that bill passing, CHED, TESDA, and PRC, they've signed an agreement forming a unified body that puts together the CHED technical panels and industry boards and PRBs into one joint committee to review all of their curricula. Because what's happening now is we ladder after the fact. Meaning to say, TESDA develops its own TR, CHED develops its own PSGs, tapos sabi nila, can we sit down and ladder? So our point is, why don't you design it to ladder? Meaning, from the get-go, plan it in a way that you have exits, plan it that you have ladders, plan it that the progression is clear, so that the system is harmonized by design, not after the fact. Because it takes millions of years for them to ladder after the fact, which is why it's not moving. And so they've agreed to do that already. And for the next 3 years, we will finish it for the priority sectors of EDCOM.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Rafi and Dr. Yee. You have one, Director?
Yes, one question. You have your slide there
Yes.
on the targets, the passing and the completion. So, and then you mentioned all the consequences. It's also a consequence for the teacher who will be, inheriting the students. And then you also mentioned a lot of the stigmas associated. I think when I was at DAP, we were the one handling the performance-based bonus. I think that's one incentive tied to that target. Meaning to say, if they fail a student, then they would not get their performance bonus. So it's tied to monetary incentives. So has that been removed? So because, the disincentive, is there for the teachers just to pass.
From my understanding and what we've investigated so far, it is no longer, correct me if I'm wrong, if there are teachers here, it is no longer connected to the teacher, but it's connected to the principal. So what happens is the principal then puts pressure on the school because it's her. I mean, yes, her evaluation, her rating, her PBB probably, that will all get affected because her performance is equal to the performance of the school, and the performance of the school includes these metrics. Which is why our appeal nga to DepEd, to DepDev, and to DBM, let's rethink this because the intentions are very good, but the unintended consequence is really mass promotion. So we're not getting what we need out of it. So it's time to rethink. Yeah.
All right. So thank you all so much. I'm so sorry we only have enough time for those questions, but perhaps in the future we would still have more avenues to discuss these important matters. So thank you again,
Thank
Dr. Yee, for sharing such crucial perspectives on the direction of Philippine education reform. Today's discussion underscores how the next decade will be decisive in shaping a system that is equitable, coherent, and ready for the future. So we all leave with a lot to think about this afternoon. To all our participants, again, thank you for your thoughtful questions and active engagement. Thank you, and we hope to see you again at our next INNOTECH Seminar Series.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Kay and Dr. Yee. So at this point, we would like to you may now take your seats. So at this point, may we respectfully invite Dr. Mahale Rabago to kindly join us on stage to present the certificate and token of appreciation. Also, Dr. Karol Yee. So allow me to read the citation. The Southeast Asian Ministers of Education, Regional Center for Educational Innovation and Technology, proudly presents a certificate of appreciation to Dr. Karol Mark Yee, Executive Director of Second Congressional Commission on Education. So we also invite everyone now at this point for our group photo. So may we request everyone to rise. So, before we officially conclude the program, we kindly encourage everyone to take a moment to complete our end of program evaluation survey. The QR code and the Google Form link are currently displayed on screen. You may scan it now or feel free to take a quick photo so you can complete the survey at the time that is most convenient to you after. So, our upcoming seminar also flash on our screen are our prospective guest speakers for the coming year. So we sincerely look forward to your continued participation and support in our coming future learning events. So at this point, we thank our participants for our online participants for joining us this afternoon.
INNOTECH, we have come with hope so bright. The million learners' voices free, they all thrive in the love of life, and lifelong learning brings. Through the decades we fed